All right, yeah, I had to get off mute. All right, cool. Well, welcome. Yeah, digital citizenship, fun thing, especially online, right? Where you don't really have much control over what's going on because they're physically not in front of you. But we're going to try to tackle that and address that today. I will tell you a lot of it is culture. It's the culture you set and it's the modeling. So we're going to talk about mainly those things that you can do to assure that you are modeling, because you can only control so much. You're not physically in front of the classroom. You don't have a prepared environment for them. The best you can do is prepare the online experience for them to be all the things that involve what we need to do for digital citizenship. I am putting in the chat right now something so that you can follow along with the presentation, because this one is a little more presentation heavy than any of the others where you actually went out on your own. So you could actually follow the presentation. I do have some interactive pieces within it that are kind of fun to do. So let me add that now. So I'm using Pear Deck. I don't know if you've ever used that before, but Pear Deck is a tool that allows you to, you'll see it in a second. I just hit enter. Pear Deck is a tool that allows you to present like a Google slide, and then on the Google slide, you can have different items be able to show. And so by clicking on the link that says https://app.peardeckstudent, that area, that way you'll be able to get on. I can actually check to see that I have 20 students connected and so forth. It keeps going. And so that way you can follow my presentation and follow what I'm saying. And again, just use the chat area for questions, and I'll stop and pause and look at those. But this is going to be kind of an interactive way for us to do things. So we'll just give it a second for people to get in and get on there. Will the slides be shared after the presentation? Yes, Danette, but one of the things, and you're going to notice this about a lot of presenters, and this is just a kind of a style or thing that I do, but I like, my presentation and my slides are aiding my conversation. It's not a slide where you can be like taking notes and read off the slide, because to me, that's a handout. Whereas a slide is a visual aid to help me explain what I'm talking about. And so if you just had the slide by itself, you might remember what it says, but then again, you might not. So anyway, but I'd be happy to share it with you. That's not a problem. I'll do that at the end. I'll just make sure you guys all have access to view it. So anyway, and if you're not viewing my presentation, I will still, like if you didn't sign up and join via the app, I will still share my screen so that way you can see what I'm seeing. So that way, if you'd rather do it. If you are, and I don't know who said it, but someone, reminded me, just if you want to pin me in my presentation, basically, if you pin me on people, so if you click on people and go to where I am talking, it will pin me so that way you can see what I'm doing. Yeah, and it does take a while to load sometimes. Yeah, just give it a minute. There are 74 people in the class. I'm going to hit start class just so you can actually start seeing my screen. This has information about me, my email. If you haven't been to a session with me, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been an educator for almost 20 years. For about 10 years now, I've been working on my own independently, working for myself to go around the districts around the country and help them with all sorts of things. I kind of like to say have a vast knowledge in lots of different technologies, but also a deep amount of knowledge too in those, because it helps me integrate and understand how they all work together. So I do work for Google and Apple and Microsoft and several other companies like ZSpace and Hapar and Seesaw, just to help people understand and learn how to use the tools. So anyway, I think we're good. Let me share my screen now that we have more people in, and I will share my entire window so everybody can see. And let's just in case people aren't in or people came in late, I'm just going to add it to the chat one more time, just in case if anybody else wants to click on it. What will happen is you can either view my presentation, but if you view your own, basically if you logged into the Pear Deck link, you will actually see my presentation move as I move through it. So that way you'll be able to follow along. And also I'll be able to ask questions and do kind of impromptu stuff if I need to. All right, so let's start. Digital citizenship in online courses. Okay, I don't want to read this, but I'm going to highlight the areas. So when we are thinking about digital citizenship, I think it always starts with modeling, because this is basically digital citizenship should actually be a word we don't use anymore, because it's basically just citizenship. And the digital part is just so ingrained in what we do in everyday life that it actually crosses over. So what we're really talking about is creating a culture of good citizens in the way that we want people to live and treat each other and respect each other, and respect their intellectual property throughout our lives. So we're going to look at strategies that you can do that, kind of things that you can think about in each moment that you're teaching. So whether it's, part of your day where you're doing online lessons, or having conversations with students, or presenting materials, we'll talk about the ways that you can bring those in. But we're going to try to promote it as much as possible and give students engaging ways to interact, because the more they're active, which is basically a thing we've definitely learned in these last couple months anyway, the more you're active in your life around you and not just your little bubble, the better we are at understanding everybody. And that's just our culture that we need to create, that people are actively involved in not only politics, but also other people and churches and communities and different parts there. So we're actually trying to promote all of these things, but we're using our classroom as kind of a microcosm of promoting that and giving them a place to practice and be comfortable with and do that and kind of learn. So when I think about digital citizenship, I think about the four kind of pillars of learning competencies for digital learning. So you have leadership in digital learning, you have digital citizenship, you have digital content instruction, and you have data and assessment. Of course, we're going to focus on digital citizenship, but these are things, all these things we should be competent as teachers. So today, let's focus just on the digital citizenship. And I have a couple things that kind of fall under that. So the first one is you as a teacher being able to understand and abide by the copyright laws and fair use guidelines. So when you're sharing, images or things that for students to use in assignments, or if it's something you've created, making sure that the sharing of that information is respected. And if you do share information from someone else, you say that you did share it from that. And that's part of just being, saying, hey, I'm giving credit to this person for doing it. I know it seems like a simple thing to do, and it seems like something we could easily, do without speaking, or you probably already do it, but it goes a long way if you're just constantly saying okay, I borrowed this from someone, or I modified this with their permission. Those kind of words just help us along the way, show that, hey, I can't possibly create everything new, and it's okay to use other people's stuff. And that's, and this is what I liked about it, and this is what I didn't, but I'm respecting their work because they took time to create it, or they took time to find it. So that's the first part. So you doing it. And then not only you doing it, but you requiring them to use it. And so requiring the use of copyright and fair use in student work. So them not copying things. I know there's lots of technology tools to keep students from copying and plagiarizing and things like that. Always giving them stories about what they don't understand, the innocence of, copying something, because they don't think it's actually harming, anybody or anything. But in our global world, I mean, all of this stuff is actually going to affect somebody one way or another. When you do require them. Again, you're modeling it, but you're also just asking them, and depending on their grade level, what is it that you're actually asking them to show as far as works cited or copywriting? Is it something that's just published for you to see, or is it published for the entire the world? Maybe it's published on the web. That your copyright and how you use that is going to differ based on those items. I would refer to anything that your district has done as far as copyright. They probably have handed out several different things. I would also refer to your library media specialists. They're going to be the experts on how your district wants to handle copyright and fair use, and just always ask them. They're going to be your best resource for that. All right, the next part is engaging in responsible and professional digital social interaction. So we'll look at that because that's one of the kind of themes throughout, is that you are going to be interacting with them socially. You do it all the time, every part of the day. And so you need to kind of show and model those responsible things and actually know what's responsible. I talked earlier about kind of the lines between citizenship and digital citizenship getting so blurry. It's because now we share and are able to talk through so many things, and students might have the idea that it's appropriate to do it in digital world, but not appropriate in the real world to do. And so helping your students understand that, and I think with more of this video conferencing and basically video calls and remote learning through video has actually help students understand, oh, wait a second, they are part of the same thing. When I post this on the chat message, that's the same thing as me just going, standing up in the middle of class and announcing this. And so it's kind of like those interactions and those practices and helping them see that these things matter. And so the same things that you would want to apply if you were standing in a crowd with a bunch of people you didn't know, would you share that information? Would you act the way you are? And those are the kind of things that you are going to model, and you're going to help students understand when they don't. Because when we think about all of our students, they're all just trying to figure out what it is where they fit or where their place is during this learning and how they interact with the world. And so they're going to try things. Some will try it if they're like a rebel personality. They're going to try it just to spite because that's their personality. And others are just going to follow the rules. And so if you set guidelines and then also help the ones who are going to disobey them anyway, help them understand why and come to them from a point of empathy and tell them why it's going to be not beneficial for you or anybody else to act this way, then that's about all you can do, because otherwise you get into this kind of back and forth like punishment and kind of a more of a authoritarian type of relationship. And you want it to be a more of a growth mindset relationship and not kind of hand it down. So again, that's why modeling is going to be your best feature. The last couple things are global awareness. Okay. So this means in your communication, how you communicate with someone, greetings, knowing, how certain people should be greeted, the respect that they might need. Maybe if it's even a different culture, certain people in different cultures, like saying please is actually, you only say that for, you don't say please to people who are like very close to you. You only say please for people who are kind of people you don't know. And so just having an awareness of that and knowing how different cultures work is going to help. Also in your assignments and any of your materials, making sure your materials have a variety and show different cultures, different beliefs, different ideas, even down to the pictures and the photos that you use or the examples that you use. Think about your community and them not only seeing themselves in these examples, but also showing them examples that aren't themselves, because that way they can learn like, oh, I didn't even know somebody would even consider thinking about doing this. So coming up with alternatives for that, because our books and our textbooks are all written, and we know there's probably some bias, and maybe they have not considered all the cultural awareness that we are thinking about today. So thinking about that, thinking about your communication, your collaboration tools, and how people work. So again, knowing your students, but being aware of the global impacts of everything you do is important. The last thing is probably closest to me about this is just having a equitable access and opportunity and participation for all learners. Because we have seen digital citizenship, being a citizen means having basically the full rights and ability to have the same opportunities as other people, just because of not just where they were born or who they were born to or where they live or their socioeconomics or their religion or any of those things. It needs to be a way that can kind of help them all be at the same opportunities and the same participation. And it might mean doing more for one group of students or one student that may need more than the other. So I have a nice graphic here that I'd like to use just to show this and think about this. Of course, we cannot show the justice part. That's more of a systemic thing. So if we look at the equity part, it's customizing tools that identify and address equality. So if you look at the chart on the left, this is from the Giving Tree, by the way, but it's just kind of a mock thing that I found out. So we got the inequality, right? You got all the apples on the left side of the tree. The tree is leaning to the left. So of course, this person is going to have more apples fall from the tree. So it's basically unequal access to opportunity. This one, and then we try to say, well, this is equality, right? We're giving them the same tools. We're giving them the same, you got a ladder, you got a ladder. You got a computer, you have a computer. Well, that doesn't mean it's equal, right? That's evenly distributing, but not customizing to the needs of the individual. So then you start looking, okay, well, what is equity? And so that's customizing tools. So this one needs a higher ladder. So maybe this student needs additional help. Maybe this student needs something in a different language to help them understand it. Or maybe they need a reader or notes with scaffolding. Again, this is all part of digital citizenship, because what we're doing is we're providing and taking care of people the way we want people to take care of each other. And so we're saying, okay, we know you need some assistance. We're not trying to make a big deal out of it, but we're going to help you be just as successful as the other one. And so then you can see they're now able to get the items. Now, here's the problem with equity like this is you give them this, but they still might have a lot of things just not leaning their way, kind of like the tree is leaning towards this. So, systemic things may not be in part of our control, but we can do our best to make them these things under equity. So the systemic things would be like, okay, let's make the tree stand up straight by adding these items. So now everybody has the equal access and opportunity. And so I just like that, just to kind of point that out, that this is a big part of digital citizenship, is just understanding this and understanding that we need to create this for our students. And they need to understand that every student doesn't have this. They might not even realize that things are not, equal, or people don't have the same opportunities. So I think that's good. So now what I've done is, throughout this presentation, we're going to be talking about lots of things. And so I've created a thing using Mentimeter. And Mentimeter is kind of a presentation tool that you can get crowd audience and things from. So if you want to, you don't have to, but in an additional link, if you actually copy this link down, I will put that in the chat too, if I can copy it down. Let's see. I'll put it in the chat area. All right. So it's in the chat area if you want to go there. It's at menti.com, and then it has a code you use. And basically what it's going to be is any main ideas, words to remember from this presentation, just write them in here. Uh-oh, it says voting is closed. That's not right. Let me try that again. Sorry, folks. There. Now voting should be open. All right, so if anybody was to type something in, it would actually show up here in real time, and I can kind of check back throughout to kind of see. What I like to use this for is just any ideas, so that I can gauge the audience, what they're thinking. Like somebody wrote digital citizenship. If another person wrote that, it would get bigger. And so it's instantly making a word cloud of what we're trying to talk about today and what we're doing. And so any ideas that pop out more are going to be bigger. So you can see right now, I can tell that equity was a big thing, and so is digital citizenship. So those are the biggest items, but you can see other things in there too. So this will continue to change and shape throughout. So at any time, if you want to go to this, you can always type in like, hey, here's a new thing. I set it up so you can type in 10 different kind of phrases, and you can submit 10 different times. So it's like 100 submissions each. So anyway, I'm going to move on, but just is this there for you if you want to, and we'll look at it at the end and kind of see. It'll give me a good idea of what resonated with you guys and help me understand, my presentation and how that helped you guys shape what you're thinking. And you get to see what other people are thinking too. All right, so first off, it's all about culture. Culture is what you create that fosters digital citizenship. So the same thing that you would have inside of your classroom, when you're doing it online, you are fostering citizenship. What you're doing and what you're asking of them, what you expect of them, all of those kind of things is surrounded around creating your culture so that they know what to do and they feel a part of the community and a part of the culture that you're creating. A lot of times you often hear like, oh, that teacher always has just such the best class and those kids are doing great in that. And it's because of the culture they create and the awareness that the students and that they want to be there and be a part of it. And that creates us to be stronger digital citizens because we're going to continue that whether we're in a classroom or not. So I kind of think of this as almost like a recipe book. So we have modeling digital citizenship through video meetings, which you're going to be doing, and hybrid classes. And so what do you need to be doing? Well, first off, you need to be the educator that is managing a classroom. And when I say managing the classroom, it doesn't mean you're the head of the class and you're saying everything and doing all the talking and doing all the presenting. You're managing it so that they can be independent thinkers. You don't have to solve all the problems for them. You want them to try and fail. You want them to learn from their mistakes. And so that's a key. Then the next part is you need to promote so they have their own agency. That means offering them choice, okay? Being and growing up in the United States and having a democratic government and democratic ways of thinking, we want to promote choice as much as possible and promote student agency because we know when people choose what they want to do and how they do it and are able to kind of work through the pathways to make that happen, they're going to be better for it. And some people may need more help in making decisions. Some people may need more help in getting there, but you don't have to help them unless you see that they need help and they've tried and they've experienced things and you kind of give them tips. You're not doing it for them. There's a lot of parents that will jump in and swoop in and help their kids too often, too quickly. And so that's also not promoting a digital citizen or a citizen that we want to be able to be able to help. Last thing is try as much as possible to make your experiences, and I mean like your lessons and your activities with them, as authentic as possible. So real life issues, real life current events, real life problems that they have to solve. So instead of having a project or some sort of lesson where they have to solve a bunch of math problems, well, let's say they solve these math problems. Well, what does that help them experience or learn? Well, they might know that skill, which you can say, hey, this is to learn this skill because once you know the skill, we are going to do this, or we're going to use this skill in real life. So then give them real life experiences of when they would actually use that skill. And I think they'll be better at understanding and making it more their own and doing better. The last part is preparation. what type of preparation does a teacher need to have? You need to plan, a bunch of planning. You actually need to over plan. Because if you plan for what all the kids are going to be doing, the way they're going to be interacting with you, the kids that are going to be so fast and be able to do the lessons that you already have prepared for them really quickly, what are you doing for them? What are you planning for the child who needs and has assistance? Do we need to provide them the same exact lessons, or do we need to give them different lessons? So it actually helps you even personalize learning even more by planning ahead. Then you're doing actually less up in front kind of direct teaching, because you're meeting the needs of the students where they are. So having kind of that facilitator mindset. And then choose the digital tools when they're naturally needed. Don't just choose a digital tool because they have that. So for instance, I used Mentimeter because I felt like that was a digital tool that I could get people to write ideas on, and I could get a kind of a summary from it, plus other people would get to see what other people are thinking. And so how else would I do that in a big meeting? You know, unless we had everybody being able to talk at once, which is kind of hard. So you just have to think about what the tool is and what you want out of the outcome to be. All right, so let's go through a bunch of these things that you can consider when doing in digital citizenship with online classes. So first of all, explaining and sharing information. Okay, you are going to be explaining and sharing lots of information. Sometimes that information is going to be in video form. Sometimes it's going to be, sometimes it's going to be in a live video. Sometimes it may be on a piece of paper. But are you able to, when you think about what we talked about in those pillars of digital citizenship, are you using copyright information when you share that information that you're sharing? Is it, are you sourcing it? Are you making it equitable, which means, you know, are you helping those people who can't read? Are you giving them an alternative or a way for them to get that content without having to, you know, let's say they can't read or they're unable to read because it's in a different language that they don't understand. Are you giving them access or tools that allow them to read it? Some people do multiple ways of sharing the same information. Maybe you create a video, and when you create a video to share something, or you're doing it live, you're also maybe recording audio. So that way a student or someone else who needs that information can get it just through the audio. Again, you're not redoing lessons, you're doing it at the same time. So at one point you have, you know, a document that you may have created of this is the information I'm going to share, and then you're actually reading or talking about that document in your live presentation, and then you're recording it for maybe like a podcast or an audio recording, so that students will then have access to it that way too if they need it. So all of that is just because we want to make sure we're meeting students where they are and helping them. And it's kind of like a backwards design or universal design learning. I mean, that's what we're looking at, is creating that for them. So think about what you say. Words matter, tone matters, body language matters. And so think about how you're demonstrating and showing that in your virtual classrooms or in your online conversations with students. So if you do have lessons or lectures or anything like that that you are doing, I would record them. And so if you're doing it live, also record it, so that way if a student missed or they need to see it again, or they need it slower or faster, or they need to have additional information, or they need a visual rather than just people talking, record all of those items. Give them the ability to have a video with closed captioning, so then they can read what you're saying, because maybe they have hearing issues and they may be able to see it. So again, this goes back a lot to equity and kind of an inclusive classroom, but also it can be in everything you do. So your lecture and your lessons are going to be those that are going to show students that this is, you know, a way that you present to the world, and they're learning from that modeling of how you speak to people and how you encourage people and how you give other people, give people different opportunities, and let them take advantage of them. Conferencing. I know this is something that that is always encouraged, but a lot of times we never really get to it. We only have a conference with the students who are struggling, or we only have conference if somebody asks, or those set kind of days that we're supposed to have conferencing. But I think you should do conferencing throughout, especially with online learning, is because you are not there with them. If they have any kind of independent work on their own, they're going to need some sort of kind of talking it over, going through and assessing how they're doing things, and how they're addressing what they need to do. And so if you're not spending every day in school and you're actually just at home doing kind of total online learning, you actually have more time for conferencing because your lessons are either already prepared or they're kind of smaller chunk bit of lessons, so that way students can digest them, and then you're able to meet the needs of the students where they are when they're having trouble. Same thing like if you did in the classroom, you know, if you did some sort of assignment or something in class and then you give them independent work, well, then you're kind of going around monitoring, seeing how students are working. Conferencing is kind of the same way, but you're able to do this because of the remote aspect and having students be able to bring in during video. Now, if you don't have the ability for students to be in contact with you through video, there has to be other ways that you need to be able to meet with those students. And it could just be simple phone calls, or you know, other ways, you know, maybe set up, depending on how you have it. Maybe there's a way inside of Google Classroom or something that you're asking specific questions to specific students to help them rather than the whole class. This goes in the line of social emotional learning. So just thinking about creating a space where students can also express and share what's going on inside of them, besides, and how they're approaching and thinking about their own learning and themselves and who they are as people. Because as educators, we know we're trying to help the whole child. It's not all purely academics or all athletics or something like that. We're trying to help them be the best people they can. And so having them be able to know what's inside their head and what they're thinking is also going to help them. If we're dealing with an online class only, if you're at that moment where you just have online classes and that's all you're going to be teaching, well, why not have shared mindful experiences with them, or actually schedule those as part of the day so that the students practice that? They're going to feel more distant and away from their peers anyway, and having that social interaction. So providing them a better, healthy space for them to know what they're thinking and be able to express is just going to make them better people anyway. Also, this is just a short thing, but planning with colleagues, I mean, that to me is something that needs to be shared a lot of times with students. They don't realize a lot of times, and I'm talking about students across, that we work with each other and help each other out. Like, we plan and do things. We maybe create a document or a lesson together or a calendar, so that way we can talk and help each other. They need to know that we do that. Because I think that is a part that they don't see modeled, because they come into your class, you teach, and then they don't think that you got your information from, you know, anywhere else, or somebody helped you. They, you know, they may see it, but they don't see it as kind of a working together type thing. They just think, oh, you're just in the silo, you got your information and now you're sending it to them. And so I think as much as you can not only just plan with colleagues, but talk about what you did with your colleagues, and because that will plant the seed for them for collaboration and how they work together. You know, you can give scenarios like, oh, I didn't know about this, so I asked so-and-so because they had done it in their classroom and she shared this with me, and now I'm going to try it with you guys today. Like, those kind of things just help them understand that we are just not people that can work independently, and that collaboration is a tool that needs to be used and fostered. Class discussions are going to be one of your biggest tools, no matter what age. I think the younger the students are, the more time you're going to want to have synchronous as far as online classes. So providing more time for them to see each other, to talk to each other, to share, even provide maybe a social outlet for them to kind of talk with you about stuff that's just going on without necessarily school. Like, either, you know, 5 minutes before the meeting, you can come in and join and talk to your other classmates, and then we'll start our lesson. those kind of things, or, set up another time for them to be together. But class discussions, whether you have students in class all the time or with you in the classroom, or even if you have a hybrid where some students are at home and other students are in the classroom, setting up your classroom so that everybody can access each other. Because if you have separate times for your remote students than your regular class that are in the school, well, that's going to make it difficult on both, because they might have friends or other people and other perspectives that they never get to hear, because it's almost like they're separate classes. And if you're trying to build any type of community, having those kind of set moments would be good, and having students schedule those times, or having you schedule times that students can meet. Now, can students based on schedules always meet? No, that's what you probably found out in the spring. That's a very difficult thing to do, is make sure people are at a certain synchronous time together. But if you can schedule them, try to at least offer. Students may not be able to get there, but at least offer that so you can have those opportunities for class discussions. A lot of times students, especially, they're going to be craving that social interaction anyway. They're going to move things around or move their schedule around if they can to make them. All right. And then just simple things too. Even in an online class, even when I teach adults, I try to have in my online classes set times or things where I can just talk to them about how they're doing, what's going on. It doesn't always have to be class stuff, just to kind of help them know that I'm there for them. And then they can have a conversation with me, and it doesn't have to be just about the studies. And so that helps us know each other better, which is going to help us teach each other and learn from each other better. So it seems like it's common sense, but these are the things that we need to do, especially when you have such a distant, learner who's learning totally online. All right, parent support. This is another aspect that probably has changed most since we are doing more online, is because students at all different levels need different support. And we know as teachers how to kind of push the right buttons to make that happen for X student. But the parents might not know. They know their kid as their kid at home. But when a kid goes to school, they might be a totally different child in the way they approach things, how they do things, and that parent doesn't see that. Plus, the parent might not know what you know as a teacher, like, oh, I know how to get them to start this activity. Because if they're working on their own on an online class, they might not ever start without somebody like prompting them a certain way. And if they have a parent who's more like, you need to do this at this time, and kind of forcing the schedule on them, and maybe that doesn't work for that child. So you need to work to support the parent and help them help their child, because your parents have and will be taking on a greater role and responsibility. So the more you can do to support them is going to be key in helping that. So that also will help the two-way communication between your parents and you with a student. So then you'll know more about what's going on. Again, if classes are online, your content is either already distributed or partway distributed, so that students can progress on their own kind of self-paced way. That gives you more time for these type of interactions, which I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't have time for this. But you will, because if you've done all the planning ahead of time and planned the lessons and created them, you're actually just sending them the lessons, and then now you're kind of monitoring and providing feedback and helping support them as they go through it. Screen sharing, of course, is very helpful, because you can talk about things, you can write directions, but a lot of times people need to see them. And so visuals as much as possible as you can. If you can do screen sharing, there's lots of good screen sharing applications. Students can even screen share using like Screencastify, stuff like that. So it's really good for step-by-steps, so that way they can not only hear it, but they can also see it, and they can play it at their own pace. So again, we're looking at all these digital citizens tools because we're making it equitable, we're providing information so that they can see different areas. Well, now our content still has to be something that provides some sort of global awareness. So that's going to be more heavy on the content areas, like what you actually do as assignments. It has to be more of a global picture than maybe you have in the past. This is also important. This to me is, again, kind of around the global awareness part, is if we have these shared experiences together, times where they actually see and experience the same thing, whether it's reading together, or watching a video live together, or just attending a live event, even though they might be on their monitor, they can actually see that live event with you and kind of talk about it. Those are the things most students actually remember if you think about it. Like if they're going to graduate or move from, like, they just finished elementary school and they're moving up to middle school, they're going to think about what are the things that, they remember about that school and what their experience was. They're going to think about these big moments, these shared experiences where they got to do stuff with other people. Maybe it was a fun science experiment, or maybe it was like when they got to, do some sort of thing at a recess or something like that. So any type of shared experiences that you can create for them so that they can build kind of those memories, and that memories also will help them grow stronger as a community, because then they have something to talk about with those other people and they're not all living, kind of in these silos. Small group, it's just going to allow you to own in on those personal needs of the students. So as much as you can, focus in on the small group support, because personalization is going to also help it make it more equitable for those students who may need more help, or maybe they need support to even grow further. And so by doing that, it's going to help you focus on that. So all of this, you're like, okay, this is all about teaching, but how is this about digital citizenship? Well, you're promoting, again, through your modeling of supporting a small group, is you're saying, hey, these people need attention, and I need to provide them attention because I want them to be able to have the opportunity that someone else innately already has. If somebody's really good with executive functioning and can kind of manage their day, well, then I need to provide them a different types of support. But if somebody's if that's their difficulty, like I have 3 kids, and one of mine would be able to just do an online class and kind of monitor and be able to set up their own schedule. Whereas another one, they would probably never start unless they were prompted or helped or had some sort of ways for me to make them, kind of not make them, but more like help them see how they can manage this thing that may seem overwhelming to them, like this big online class and have to go through all these modules. So that's another reason why personalize. Project sharing is always important because students need to be leaders too. You can't just have top down, like the teacher is the only one presenting. If a student is very adept at something, have them create a screencastify and share a lesson. Say, hey, I'm going to be sharing this lesson next week. This, can you create something? And you're saying, okay, well, is that kid really doing your job? No, because you're still managing it. It's just they're providing kind of the lesson. And so now students then get to see that student and themselves as leaders and people who can share knowledge, because otherwise they don't see that and they think, oh, I'm only doing what the teacher says. And so I think, having more project sharing and students being able to show that is going to be beneficial for everybody, not only for the student who did it, but for the other students to see that students can also be information sources. All right, office hours, again, just being available is the big thing here, making sure that students and parents have a place or see a time that may not be under your normal hours. And this does actually add to your day, but you don't have to do this every day. You can just offer office hours for people like need help. Maybe parents need to hear how other parents are doing. Maybe it's a parent only office hours, and you offer something where parents can come and talk to each other like, oh, this is how I help my child work at home through online, or I let my child do this, and then, he seems to work better at this time doing it during his online working. But just hearing and having those experiences, now you're opening up the community to help each other and not being, you being the only source that's helping. So that's also a good way. I'm going to stop for a second here. I'm going to check out my Mentimeter, see what's going on. Wow. Okay. So we got a lot of things in here, and it keeps changing. This is awesome. Hybrid classes, relationship, mistakes are okay. Some of these are smaller than others. Families, equity is big. I figured it would be. That's an important part for me. Being responsible, justice, Pretty big. All right, cool. So you can see like something like this helps us kind of understand as a teacher, but also if I show this to students too, they can kind of say, okay, well, it sounds like this is what you're talking about. So those are always nice. I've even read like chapters in books and had students write down keywords and things like that. And then at the end of the chapter, we looked at the word cloud and we saw, oh, okay, I guess that's what that chapter is about. And so it kind of helped us have a synthesis of everybody's ideas together and understand things that were more important to others and not. And then you kind of start looking at the smaller things and be like, I wonder why this wasn't as important to other people, or, why wasn't that mentioned? And maybe you point those out and have a discussion about it. So again, just a great visual tool, but also it shows a lot more than we think. All right, next part. Going into bringing experts. Hey, yeah, they're going to be tired of you. You're doing lots of assignments and doing lots of presentations and sharing. They do like probably seeing your videos rather than the random person on YouTube. So if anytime you can create your own, that would be better. But plus you would also have copyright, so you would own it and you'd be able to do it what you want. Whereas if you're using somebody else's materials, depends on whether they allow you, whether it costs. There's lots of things. Maybe they're teaching it in a different way. But when we bring experts in, now we're actually bringing other people who have different knowledges. So we're saying also that other people have expertise that we can take perspective from and think about and kind of use that to help us shape what we're thinking. It could be simple, scientists or things like that. It could be somebody who's an executive or a worker, or people who employ people if you're thinking about older ages, or if you're trying to expose younger kids to different types of people and jobs and things like that, bringing them in to be a part of it and just talk about anything that you're doing. They could just be a guest and say, hey, we've been studying World War II. What do you remember about that? And maybe it's somebody of significance, but maybe it's someone in their community that they see. And they'll be like, okay, this is what I remember and this is what I know. Hey, why don't you guys tell me something that you understand, and I'll see if I can help you. And so just having an additional person, another either a caring adult or another person in there that has an interest in the information that you're looking at can go a long way. All right, engaging tools. I am using one of those engaging tools with Pear Deck right now. I didn't put Mentimeter in here, but these are some of the tools that I like to use, and I'm just going to go over a couple of these, but these are for us to, when we talk about digital citizens, we're giving them opportunities to have in our basically artificial world, we're giving them opportunities to try things, to say things, to think things without this scrutiny that they might get in the public arena, or they might not even be ready for. So we're basically using this as a trial, and I'll go back to kind of an apprenticeship. So they're learning how to learn and where they kind of fit in their thoughts. And so using things like this helps shape that. So something like TED Ed, if you've never used that, these are all the TED Talks, and they actually have lessons built in with the TED Talks. And they ask like driving questions and real thoughtful questions. So it kind of helps your students think on a more higher level or deeper level of thinking. And you get feedback from their understanding and watching the videos. If you've never used Flipgrid, it is a social interaction tool. The whole idea behind Flipgrid is creating a grid, which is like a class, and then a topic. And then the topic itself can then be created as a video. It could be a tutorial or a video of the teacher explaining something, and then students asynchronously could at any time, if I present a Flipgrid lesson and I post it at 8 o'clock, I could have a student respond at 9, and then another student respond at 9:30, another student respond 3 days from now. And they could all respond to my video, so I could get personal feedback from them and kind of see what they know, or they can respond to each other. Flipgrid also allows you to moderate those videos. And that doesn't have to be just videos. It could be screen sharing. It could be whiteboarding. They have the ability to do all of that. Starting August 5th, they will have a split screen. So you will be able to your video will be one part of the screen, and then the other part of the screen could be your whiteboard. So you could actually talk and explain. This could be done on a phone very easily. It's the same app that when you get on the phone, it looks the same as it does when you're on a computer, when you're on a PC or Mac. So it's a nice tool, especially for asynchronous learning. Pear Deck is what I'm using now. It just adds on to the slides. It can be used with Google Slides. It's just considered an add-on. There is a premium version, but for the regular version, you actually get a lot of stuff. And so this allows us to do different things. Right now, I haven't asked you guys to necessarily interact with the slides, but you are going through the slides on my pace. What's nice about Pear Deck and Nearpod, they're very similar as far as like slides. You can ask questions. And so I could ask a question right now. So I'm just going to go to new prompt, and I'm just going to go to, I'm going to have you drag on the screen. So I'm just going to make this draggable. So I want you to drag your icon to any tool that you really like to use, or a tool that you've used. And so I'm sharing my screen and I can see everybody's. So we got a lot of Flipgrid users, some Nearpod, some Pear Deck, some Desmos, even some Edpuzzle. Nobody at Formative. Okay. Well, I will talk about Formative. Formative, and some people might know it as Go Formative, but that's just the kind of the logo. What that does is allows you to have lessons for students to be self-paced. And the great part about Formative, it allows you to tag individual like skills or standards. So it's almost like a standards-based lesson. So by them answering certain questions, you tag those lessons or those questions with certain standards. That way you can prescribe exactly, oh, does this person know this skill or not? If you want to, if you're looking at your own presentation and you want to go back over to the Google Meet page so that you can see mine, just if you've never seen Pear Deck before, I actually can see everybody's stuff right on top of each other. So it's a pretty cool tool to be able to get this. And now we're thinking about people who are maybe not able to write, our younger kids, they're able to move an icon around, right? So you can actually have questions where they move what they're doing around. I can even lock the screen so nobody else can move their items, so everything's frozen. I can also do a grid layout, and so if you guys were all signed in as part of my, let's say I was using Palm Beach County Schools, I would be able to see your name next to each one of these. And so that's a nice tool too, because you could get really down to the assessment of what someone has. And so again, these are all tools that are going to help you better help the student and reach them and know what they're doing, and you're giving them opportunities in different ways. All right, I'm going to unlock the screen and go on to the next slide. Awesome. All right, something we forget a lot about, but this is also a part of that equity, is the arts and movement. Okay, so if we're designing online activities, no matter what subject it is, you know, even in like coding and stuff like that, I would venture to say that you would have students that would also be able to, or maybe would also need, and not have to always be in front of a computer, give them opportunities to do other ways to show they understand. So for instance, if you're actually just teaching coding or some sort of writing language in a, computer language, maybe have them make a song about that language and how they learn it, or what they need to do, like almost like directions. Or maybe, you know, some sort of dramatics that would show, you know, their understanding, or maybe some artwork that would show that ability. Or maybe it's something, those people who teach more hands-on stuff, you know, what can you have them do that will show and demonstrate their understanding? Also, you know, always encourage your students to move, right? We always are trying to get our students and everybody to exercise more, right? You know, you can't exercise, or excuse me, we want people to exercise, we want people to sleep, we want people to eat right. We're doing that. Those are kind of our basics of what we want students to do, so that they can be ready for all the academics and all the things that they face in their day, and having the energy and the motivation to do that. So maybe it also means providing them movement times during the day. Say, you know, on your online classes, you might have a time that you say, hey, I'm not answering any questions, I'm not checking anything, this is a time you need to go out. Or maybe you need to take a picture and show or do a video. Maybe in Flipgrid you have a thing that says, show me what you did during your movement break. And so that way they're kind of logging in and showing you that they're doing it, and they're getting either some sort of credit or something for doing that if you have to. But that's going to help break up that online day, because it's going to be hard for students to stay online all the time. As you probably well know, you had to end, most of us, we had to stop school early because students were not necessarily doing what they were supposed to be doing. So that means we weren't either, they'd kind of finished what they were supposed to do. We didn't assign or scaffold enough, or we didn't provide different alternative ways. They were just kind of doing computer work the whole time. So we got to think of different ways. Check-ins are also good. This also just focuses on meeting the students' needs and helping them be able to go through and progress. That's what I was talking about earlier for someone who's has executive functioning difficulties. So again, I keep talking about a lot of these strategies that we should do as teachers for online, and like the way that I want you to think about it is through digital citizenship. We're modeling these things because this is what we would want. We would want people to check in on us, if they didn't hear about us for a while. That's what, a good neighbor does. That's what a good, friend does, is say, hey, how are you doing? That kind of thing. We happen to be doing it in the realm of the school day and academics, but we're still teaching them how to be citizens, even though our focus is primarily academics. So this next tool, this is, I just have this here. When I give you the slide itself, you should see all of these are linked. I think the black bed is not, but most of these are linked. And so what it is a link to how to do those things. So when I think about synchronous or asynchronous learning, I think about 3 different levels. And some of you saw this when I did this was one slide I pulled from something I did back in, I think March for Palm Beach. But you have your 3 steps. You have your delivery. How are students getting information? How are they getting your online class? Is it via Zoom? Is it via website? Is it through Google Classroom? Are you doing stuff through Flipgrid? How are they getting delivered the content? And so you start there, and then what content are you delivering? Is it some sort of document? Is it a PowerPoint that you're sharing with them? Is it something in Pear Deck that you're doing live, or maybe it's student-paced? Because Pear Deck and Nearpod and even Formative all have student pace levels. So you could actually create a slide and they can go through at their own pace at any time and complete it, and you would get results from what they did. So those are good tools for that. But is it a video? Is it something in Edpuzzle? Is it a document they have to work on? Where is this content coming from? Then the students, in the same content that you're using, they should be able to respond back in the same type of content. So maybe the only difference would be like maybe a form. Maybe they respond to your lesson in Google Classroom with a form, or they respond with a document that you distributed, or maybe it's something just in Classroom. Maybe you ask a question. Maybe they go to Edpuzzle, you assign that in Classroom, and then they use the Edpuzzle to answer questions, because Edpuzzle allows you to have videos and then ask questions in the middle of videos. Or maybe it's just, I know my slide's not showing there at the bottom, maybe it's just video feedback. Maybe it's just talking to students. So you have these 3 levels, and just think about, if you go through this as a teacher and think responsibly, like, how am I giving them content? Does everybody have access to this? Am I sharing my content so that people have enough time to do it based on what they need to do at home and what their lessons and their ideas and things that they might have to go through? For my struggling ones, am I giving additional help for those older? This is all taking care of your students and their needs as citizens. And so you're helping them develop this. You're trying to also develop a relationship so that they feel comfortable talking to you as adults and asking you questions and feeling comfortable. So provide them opportunities. And some might not want to talk. They might want to, send you a message in texting. Some might rather do it in video that nobody else sees, and they don't want to do it in the meeting. And so there's lots of ways. You just need to give them opportunities. So now we're going to move on to kind of scheduling. And so here's an example of like a typical student schedule or a schedule somebody might have, or what I might encourage, because you want to help those students. Even if students already know their own schedule and they kind of can figure stuff out, I would provide a schedule or a sample schedule, so that way the students know, like, hey, this is kind of the expectation, how long you should be working on this, how long this activity should take, and giving them breaks during the day too, so that they can also see, like, okay, nothing is going to be, I shouldn't be working at this time. Try to make it more like the school day if you can, knowing that some students are going to not work on this schedule, but at least providing this gives them a place to start. And so some who don't know, they're like, yes, I'm just going to follow the schedule. Others are going to be like, nope, I can't do this at this time, so I'm going to move this around. Students and parents will be able to manage, but giving them and providing them these type of things would help. So you can see it's just, from simple stuff as getting up, getting dressed, eating, like making sure that's important that they eat, right? Giving them brain breaks, going outside for fresh air, like actually provide that in the schedule so they know that that's an expectation, that helps them, and if they don't know why they have to do that, if they just want to work all in the morning, well then, explain and ask them. Maybe even ask your students to ask you to send a schedule of how they're going to work each day, because that's going to help you help them better. Here's an example of a teacher's schedule. So if you're working totally online and you're online and they're online, you might wake up, prepare for your first class, meet actually, live with the class, teach something, assign the work, and then they're independent, right? So from that point on, you are either working on other lesson plans, you're checking and responding to emails, maybe sending out notifications for another class or something like that, but you're basically monitoring what's going on. Then you have some time to prep right before the next class, maybe get your slides ready, things like that. Then you meet with the class, then you have lunch. Then, you separate and give yourself time away so you're not working all day. Then maybe after that, you're just checking. Maybe you're not having actual lessons, live lessons, and you're just checking in with individual students and providing personal support. Then maybe at a later date, even holding office hours for students, or maybe even in the evening, holding it for parents like once a week. And then you start to look at your assessments and thinking about grading and think about the stuff they submitted. Now, I would have submit days at the end of the school day. Don't set them up for 11 o'clock. So like Google Classroom by default sets it for the end of the day if you just set a date. So make sure you change the time so that it does a time at the end of the day. One of the rule of thumbs that I've seen that works best is providing, if you have a lesson or some sort of activity that the student needs to do, providing them double the time at home, because it might take a little bit more time to actually understand the lesson. Maybe they have to go through it a couple times. Maybe they have to know where their items are, because in the classroom, you're basically like handing it to them on a platter and saying, here's what it is, here's what you do, now do it. And then they also know when to stop, because you're there to tell them, okay, class is over, or I need these collected. So if they're working at home, you're gonna have to basically give them more time. So if a normal lesson is 20 minutes, then say, okay, well, it's 40 minutes. And then as far as like, when do they have to turn in stuff? Well, if you double the time that they need to do it at home and then add a day, it gives them an extra day to turn that assignment in. And so that way you're not pushing anybody to work in time constraints, because maybe some of these students, they can't follow this normal day. Maybe they have to work because their parents aren't able to work or something like that. Or maybe they're helping out, or maybe they have to watch a younger sibling and help them throughout their day, so they don't have time till the end of the day to get to their stuff. So that's why always just giving that additional day for a typical thing also helps. All right, I'm gonna stop here, look at this, and also check for questions, because this is a good part. All right, go back to, all right, let's see. Yes, I agree, Rachel. She put, it's so difficult when you're also teaching your own kids at home. So on doing all of that, also you might be also the provider of teaching your own kids. So that means maybe providing, different parts, maybe your schedule looks a little bit different because some of it's based on your kid's schedule. Yeah, you guys are on block schedules, so maybe, you know, some sort of block schedule times. I don't know if you guys are going to have set times that you're going to meet, if you're going to be forced to do that or allowed. Yeah, conventional bell schedule may not be realistic. I do understand that. And that was just as a sample. Yeah, you have a lot of students that are working during school hours. So definitely you need to consider that and know that. Students are not wholly independent for us. We have a set schedule. Okay, it's good. I'm glad y'all are sharing. Lisa, that schedule is not necessarily a middle school schedule. That was just a specific schedule that I pulled from actually Microsoft, shared some schedules that some showcase schools were doing during remote learning that I thought was pretty good. It at least gives a snapshot of it. Yeah, high schools have minimum of live Google Meet per period. Okay. So I don't know what the time is of that. So yeah, you guys know better your restrictions and what you have to kind of adhere to. But you also know what your students also need. And so it's like it says you were given a schedule from your principal does not allow for this. Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of just making the most of what you're given, you know. Schedules don't dictate, and I'll say this later too, schedules don't dictate what we teach, it's just going to dictate when we teach and how we do, and you know, the ways that we're going to transfer and help this information. Somebody asked a question, is the district asking for instruction, not asking for instruction between 11 and 1 for food distribution? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, using these tools would definitely be good. All right. I appreciate your conversation that's going on there. And I'm sorry, you know, I can't tell you exactly what your schedule would need to do. Let's go back to our presentation here. So I know you guys all have, you know, you talked about a block schedule and you have some sort of amount of time. Here's from the Code of Pedagogy, these are kind of block schedule ways of teaching. And so I'm just going to go through some of the different models that they have. And just keep in mind as I'm going through, I'm going to ask you a question to kind of, at the end, see where you guys are as far as where you end up kind of teaching most. So do you teach the, you know, is your typical class a classic model, whereas you have some sort of 10-minute anticipatory set, some sort of spark, some sort of introduction, then you do some direct instruction, then you do some application where students are either working independently, you know, after they've gotten the lesson, or they're kind of on their own, and then they do some sort of turn. And this is just a regular normal day. So we're not saying just totally online, but if you think about this as the online loop, you know, are you setting up your lesson so you spark them and then you do the instruction and then they apply it and then you assess them. And the assessment doesn't necessarily have to come in this time period, but that's kind of the loop you're doing. And then you do a reflection. Is that kind of your way? Or maybe you like, you know, and create a classroom like this where you have start out your day with a 10-minute spark, or start out your lesson with kind of a mini lesson. And then the whole time, basically the main time is the students are actually working on it. They can work on long-term projects or ideas. So basically this is to kind of start their area, but then they actually go off on their own based on that lesson or other lessons, and they're working on longer-term projects with either other people or individual. And then at the end, you kind of bring them together. This is more of the facilitator role throughout, which I see a lot of people using this online, because it makes it easier to distribute the lesson, but then they have all this time in between just to help individuals. And so their time isn't spent the whole time teaching, it's more directing and facilitating. So we have the classic and the workshop. We have the lab. This can work online. basically is during your time together, that even though you're either all meeting together or you're all kind of, supposed to be doing your classwork at that time, which is possible, or maybe you have a set thing that you've set online, like this is the assignment for this week, and they're all working kind of independently as like a project based, and you're just monitoring the progress without having like a specific lesson that everybody's getting and something like that. And you're really just using it as times to help students, personally grow within that project or that discussion or the debate. Sometimes people use this, and I know it says an hour, but sometimes people use this time to be like simulations and role plays. So if you're actually doing live stuff, if you did something with Flipgrid where it was asynchronous, you could still do simulations and role plays. You would just kind of be the leader or the one who kind of starts the debate, and then have people respond throughout the day when they can. And then at the end of the day, you have a whole collection of responses that everybody can go through. And so that's just another way to lead that. It doesn't always have to be just our live teaching to make these happen. All right, do you do the performance mode? Whereas basically at the end of the unit, you probably wouldn't do this every day, but you have the entire time is set up for students to share their work. So does that mean, are you telling students, hey, you need to create some sort of product at the end and share that? And maybe that's a video that you're sharing with everybody so we can all view it. And we'll post that on Google Classroom or Google Site so people can see everybody's projects at the end. Is that a way you would do things? Do you do the variety pack, which means, do you have a little bit of everything? Do you have some students working on long-term projects while other students you're meeting with individually, and other students are having, small group work? Is it a game that you play together? Is it asynchronous? Is it synchronous? Kind of encloses all of them. So where do you see yourself kind of working in the most? So on your screen now, you should have to the right the 5 that I just talked about. Where do you see yourself spending the most time online teaching? Which kind of model? All right, we got 50 out of 100 responded so far. I'll wait a little bit more for some others. 53 out of 100. And if you don't remember what the items are, I'll just say like the classic is like your typical classroom, like you almost would manage in a on-site classroom. You start your lesson, then you have some sort of like bell ringer or something like that. Then you have a lesson for the day, and then after the lesson, the students do work. You monitor their work, and then you come back with the whole group and kind of talk about the work you did and what struggles you had, and kind of reshape it, and then you assign something new for like homework or something. Whereas the workshop is you have a mini lesson that kind of starts the day, and then students are able to kind of work, and you monitor more as a facilitator wherever they're working on, whether it's that assignment or other assignments that are more long-term, rather than here, do what I say type thing. So workshops allow more flexibility and student ownership. And then the lab is more of total, like, okay, everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. You're doing this, and I am really just monitoring how you're doing each of these things. So that's for a pure, truly like inquiry type classroom, classrooms where students aren't necessarily always directed by exactly what a teacher says, but it's more on their own, guiding their own learning. Teachers are still part of that, but it's not as forced as like, here, you got to see this lesson. Performance, I would say every once in a while, unless you're in arts and music and they're always performing, like, their job is to practice their instrument or work on their art, and then they have to share that and share and show everybody what that is. All right. So it looks like we got most 70% participation. And it looks like 12 out of the 70 said classic, 23 said workshop, 3 said lab, 1 said performance, and 31 said variety pack. Okay, 32 now. All right, so 33 keeps climbing. All right, so anyway, so this is Pear Deck, but this is also kind of a nice way to be able to pull stuff. So I'm able to kind of gauge where you guys are and what you teach. And just in this one group of, 70 some 100 educators, we have lots of different ways that we are actually teaching and using what we teach. So that also kind of helps us. So just simple questions like this also open the door for discussion. Why did so-and-so, why did we have so many people say variety pack? Why didn't hardly anybody say performance? And having those kind of discussions with your class, it doesn't have to be synchronous. It could be asynchronous. I could pull up this graphic and then talk about it and say, what do you guys think? And post that to like a Flipgrid. And then I could have each of my students then return their own video or thoughts of why they think this data shows this. And so then that again is helping us see different perspectives and hearing them, which is all part of digital citizenship. All right, moving on. So the next slide, meet students where they are with skills and understandings. That's your goal. You as much as we're taught to teach this curriculum and like, oh, I'm so behind, or they have to take this test. Bottom line is we have to care for students, and we're helping them skill by skill understanding, so that way they can get better. And you're not going to meet everybody's needs all the time, and you probably know that. If you've taught long enough, that's the case. So enjoy your students, help them be better learners of themselves, help them learn how they learn best. So if you have a student that's struggling and you are somehow able to figure out that this student learns best when they're able to write down everything that's said after a meeting, after a visual meeting, then do that. Or if you have a student at home that like, okay, they can only work, they're working all day and they can only do their stuff at 3 o'clock. So how do I help them do the stuff that they need to do for their classroom? And maybe you figure out ways to help them. And so again, you're helping them based on what their day is and their skills. Here's your teaching loop. You probably know this, not a big deal, right? You have your pre-assessment. So you're thinking about that. You have your instruction. So you're designing it based on the needs of the whole class and small groups and individuals. So your instruction could actually vary based on that. And then you do a post-assessment to see how well they did, and then redoing it again based on either reteaching or sending someone down another path. So that's our typical teaching loop, and that's the same thing in a digital citizen loop. If you think about it, right? You're assessing what do they know about being a good citizen. And then you're giving them instruction about that citizen. And maybe it's a whole class instruction because maybe you realize the whole class just doesn't understand. Or maybe it's some sort of small group. You're like, you know what? These kids just don't get this aspect. They keep doing it over and over again. And that is making, X person not feel comfortable. Or maybe somebody's plagiarizing a lot. And so maybe you have a lesson just with those students on what that means and how they're affecting other people by using their plagiarism or not using copyright. And then maybe you have a post-assessment at every level. All right. When you design your lessons, I say design experiences instead of lessons. That's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to give them an experience with that, because the lessons themselves are just like the academics and the things learned. But if you design it as an experience, it helps the student really kind of see the bigger picture, that they're experiencing something and not just, oh, this is my lesson for the day. So that goes into making things authentic. But make sure you design them so that you know what your least capable student can do, and design it so they have ways to be successful, and then design it so your most capable students not only can be successful, but then can also kind of move their own kind of growth and needle. This is kind of a different way of saying the same thing, is starting at your base. So design for the student who needs already completed notes, general video tutorials, language or reading assistance, design, to have word banks, have open notes, have more time for processing, design all of your stuff for that. Then the students who need less, basically, you design it for them so that they only have some of the skills that you're providing here. Maybe you don't provide a word bank for this group, because that's going to promote more independence if you don't give them the word bank. Otherwise, it's just going to be too easy, and they're not actually going to grow. They're just going to be able to slide through. So, you know, each group or each area is getting basically, like what Vygotsky would say, is they're in their proximal zone of development. And so this kind of helps us reach those kids. And so the third level would just be the student who already has all the skills. Like, they could do the assignment tomorrow. What are they doing? What are you doing to help them grow as a leader? Because they already have that skill. So how can they grow in their understandings? Maybe in explaining, that's a next level type thing. Maybe designing a lesson or a way for someone or themselves to understand it. Maybe a strategy that nobody thought about. Those are the ways you kind of grow those students, even with the same lesson or design. All right, and I know we've done this before, but I think it's always easier to, whenever you're planning anything, even if things change, I would say still plan for remote only, and then evaluate what is the best thing what are the best parts of remote learning that I can still use even if we end up actually back in the classroom together, you know, and what's best for asynchronous. And so think about that too, but design for this first, but think about what are the important things. Like, a lot of teachers love the idea of having discussions through like Flipgrid is asynchronous, because then it allows students at any time to give their feelings and their thoughts and not have to attend a regular meeting. So like, they may still use that even though they're in class. And that could be like almost like their homework or after hours stuff. All right, so schedules don't dictate what you're teaching, only when. Meet students where they are, design experiences, not lessons, and plan for remote only. And if we think about this last one here, just create a culture that models all of these things, because your interactions and your modeling is what's going to help these students be ultimately good digital citizens. All right, so I'm going to keep this slide up. I'm not going to end it on yours. Actually, I'm going to end the session. Okay. And I'm going to go back and stop sharing. All right, so, and I know there was lots of questions. I went through a lot of stuff there. We're close to our end of time, but we have about 7 minutes. So you can feel free to come off mute if there's something that somebody's asked and not answered, because I'm trying to look through the chat to try to catch up. But yeah, well, this time is for Q&A. All right, there's an assessment bucket, but not sure if there are presentations will teach tools to administer tests online. Yeah, I don't know. Thank you. I'm glad you feel better, Rocio, about this year. Fill out an attendance form. Anthony, did you want to say anything about attendance to make sure everybody's getting credit? The only thing I know about attendance, guys, is that if you had the e-learning email and you go through the e-learning portal, I think it takes your attendance when you click on that. If you went through another way, then I think you'd have to go back there. And I think there's also requirements there where you have to fill out some sort of form as far as the attendance is concerned.
Oh, excuse me. Go ahead.
Just real quick. Hi, Nick. Thank you so much. This has been great. This is Maureen. I just wanted to mention that there was some complication when we were trying to assign something after hours with parents. And just to let you know that it was suggested to us to not make them feel like they should attend something. And it created this exclusivity situation. And then also for the teachers to mind their contract. So I know that's part of your presentation. I just thought I would mention that. But
yeah,
thank you so much.
No, that is important. Yeah, I don't want anybody working necessarily like after hours. That's why like for the parent thing, it would be more of like just every once, not a regular thing. And then you do have students, like you said, that are working all day or working in mornings or something like that. So they still need the support just because, now we're not treating them like the others because they had to work for their family. So that's the hard part, is that, we have students that have different difficult lives and we have to tend to all of them, but yet we still have a block of time that we are kind of set to teach and students are expected to learn. So those who can't even get access to it until a certain time, it's almost like we might have to say, okay, those people who are working, this is when we meet. And so that way you can kind of get them straight and help them personally. That's what I would do. I know it's not easy because you're going to have lots of situations like that.
I have, and also, is there an easy way to take attendance in Google Meet so that I can have like a list of the students that participated and have it alphabetical to what my roster is in the class?
All right, so Roger, that attendance thing is actually something that they're working on to make almost like a quick attendance button so that you can see. I don't know when it is officially going to be launched, but I know that was part of the announcements that they made that Google Meet is going to be adding. One of the other things is they're going to be adding a Jamboard, basically like a whiteboard to Google Meets. They're going to be adding like a Q&A polling type thing right inside of Google Meet in your chat. So there's a couple other things. They're going to add like what's called like a waiting room or a lobby. So that way students can't just join, they have to be admitted into it. So there's a couple things they're adding to kind of make it better. If you look at all the platforms, whether you're Zoom, Teams, or Google Meet, they're all kind of leveling up and kind of having the same things now. So if you've heard it like, oh, that's only in Zoom, well, it's going to be in the other ones too. So as far as the attendance thing, I know that's something they were working on. I just don't know. There is, thanks Jody, there is a Google Attendance extension, and some people just use Google Forms too. And you can use the same form over and over again if you want. That way you can ask a question rather than assignment, plus you get a timestamp too. So I might use that.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, let me chime in here for just 1 second about just extensions in general. Hey, folks. We've come across, I think, collectively, a whole bunch of really cool extensions that we've been able to use in conjunction with Google Meet. The one problem we run into, and this seems to happen with almost all these extensions, when we get a district-wide, when we get an enterprise update to Meet, a lot of times the extensions break. I have one that I'm still using that hasn't broken yet, but all the other ones that I was kind of playing around with have broken when updates come out. So just be aware of that if you're using the attendance extension, which might work wonderful now. We're supposed to be getting all these enterprise updates to Google Meet in August. I don't know what the date is, but EdTech is telling us that they're all coming in August. They'll be rolled out, I think, in a staggered fashion. But if we do get some type of a capability within Meet under these new updates to do attendance, it will probably break the extension that you're using right now. So just be aware of that. You'll launch Meet and you'll go to try something and it just won't work anymore, and it's probably because of an update that Google ran. It's pretty common, unfortunately, but hey, we're rolling with it, right?
Yeah. Somebody had a question about how do you send TED Ed lessons to students by link? Yes. So you would go into like Google Classroom, for example, and type up your assignment and then just give them the link to the TED Ed lesson. And so it's, I believe, TED Ed. Let me give you, I'll share my presentation, and then that way you'll be able to click directly on the TED Ed link, and I think you'll be able to go there. So let me make sure this is shareable to you guys. All right. All right, so I just put the presentation link in there. And so that page where I had all the synchronous, asynchronous tools, All of those have links to tutorials about those particular tools. And so that's what's nice about the presentation too, but you have to be in presentation mode to click on the links, or you have to click on control to open them. Yeah, and Google Forms has lots of, you can add extensions to Google Forms too. And Misha is saying that there's a training, I guess somebody's doing in one of your tech folks is probably doing that on Google Forms, which there are lots of good stuff there. Tracy, it is true, extensions can slow down a computer. You get too many. So you can also turn things on and off too. Can I send a list of great ones that I use daily? I sure can. I will send it to Anthony, and he can send that out if it's something that the district is not using, but he feels like, okay, that works. But I'll be glad to send that to them so he can distribute that. Let's see what else. Integrating Google Classroom and Student Information System. Yeah, that's actually part of some of the newer updates too, but that's kind of a behind the scenes thing. So it's basically, it's either going to happen or it's not going to happen for your district. It's nothing that an individual teacher can do. So unfortunately, you just have to kind of wait and see on those. Yeah, Tiffany, I do agree. Many older students are going to have to babysit their younger students. That's why giving them assignments and giving that extra day or the extra time is going to be beneficial, because they do have to have some more time to do the work, and they're going to need different support because they might not be able to attend the meeting or watch the whole recording. Oh, I didn't put in here the podcasting. I'll type it up here. So the podcast that I like to use, it's a free way of creating your own podcast. It's called Anchor. It's actually was just bought by Spotify, but it's a free way. You can use your Google account and you can create a podcast that people can subscribe to and listen to, and you can give directions. You could even have your lessons there. So somebody could be outside walking. They could be traveling to work if they needed to and be listening. Parents can catch up on stuff. Oh yeah, let's do the word cloud again. So I am going to share the screen. I don't think I'm sharing now. I'll do one last share of the word cloud before y'all go. There it is. So that's what it looked like. Not bad. Did talk about a lot of different things, but we could see the common themes were equity, digital citizenship, engaging, supporting, global awareness, modeling, culture. Those were a lot of the overall themes, but there's lots of other nice ones in there. I will do a little snapshot of this so I can share that. And you can too. I don't know if you guys know how to do screen sharing, but you could screenshots, but you could easily do that too. There we go. I'll just save this. All right, is there anybody else who has any questions or things before we go? Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nick. This is another great presentation. All four of yours this week have been phenomenal. Appreciate you spending your time here with us this week. Folks, we've recorded all four of them successfully, which I can say now without jinxing it. So, folks, if there's parts of this that you want to watch again, or you know, if I know we had some people that came on and had to leave for whatever reason, that those recordings will be made available If you need the link right away, get in touch with me. But if not, they're going to be posted in e-learning. What we've been asked to do is to create a clone. They're called clones. Basically the same course as this one, but with the name, with recording in the name, so that people that come on after the fact can just enroll in the course, watch the recording, and get through the e-learning piece. So not to confuse you, that's what we were told to do, so that we did it. But finishing your e-learning course, pretty simple. You click launch to make sure that you've attended the event. You upload your reflection sheet, and you take the brief survey, and you're done. The last thing I want you to have to worry about is the e-learning piece. My hope is that you got something good out of this event today that you can turn around and use with your students here in a few weeks.
Please excuse me, can you put the other workshop that he did so we know what the workshops are? Thank you.
I'm not sorry, what was she asking for?
Yeah, there were a number of microphones on. Could you just repeat that again for us, please?
Yes, I was asking for you to list the workshop you previously did so that others can find them. Can you list them in the chat so when I go in and others go in, they know the wonderful presentation you did before? Thank you.
I guess I thought I heard correctly. You just wanted me to list the presentation link again?
Well, I think she wants all 4 of them. Yeah, we could list the names of those for you.
The names of the presentation you did before, sir.
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah, I can list those, yeah.
How do we access the trainings in e-learning, the recorded ones? Because I'm having trouble finding the recorded trainings in e-learning.
Yeah, e-learning is I mean, if anyone has mastered e-learning, please let us know who you are, because you are the Yoda of our district. It's not the easiest place to navigate, that's for sure. Let's use this one for example. When you go into e-learning, if you search Applied Digital, where it says course name, contains, or when you're doing a search at the very beginning when you go to find learning, Applied Digital, or for this one, Digital Citizenship, maybe one of the other ones that Nick did, CS First, just some part of the title. Both courses will come up, and in the course code, you'll either see the date and time, and that's the live event, or you'll see the word recorded in the course code. That's how you tell them apart. Now, if you go on and you look for a recorded version and it's not there yet, the instructor probably hasn't created it yet. Like for me, I won't create a recorded version of this course until I have a link ready. So I'm going to take this video, I'm going to convert it over and store it on the school district's YouTube account. And then once I get a link, I can then create a clone of the original course, and it'll be for the recorded session. But the way we've tried to make it easy for you all as the participants is you just go in and search the name of the course, and 2 of them should show up.
And there's several people posting ways to find it, like the technology bucket, it will list there, and also searching and clicking alternative course offerings button. After you click on it, it will say either live 7:30 or recorded at the end of a section. Jessica posted that, and Hubert posted they should pop up in the search using keyword Google. So all good ideas. All right, thanks, Anthony. I got to run. We'll be in touch.
Okay, thanks again, Nick, so much, and thanks everybody else for joining us here today. We're gonna go ahead and stop the recording now.